First story. I cut ties with my family and went NC after they supported my brother cheating with my then-girlfriend. Now, 19 years later, a teen girl showed up at my house, claiming she is my niece and wants a relationship with me, saying her parents, my brother and ex, died in an accident. I've been no contact with my family for almost 19 years. I thought I'd buried that part of my life for good. But 2 weeks ago, it all came crashing back in the form of a teenage girl standing on my doorstep. A bit of backstory. I went NC with my family after a massive fallout with my younger brother, Matt. Long story short, he slept with my girlfriend at the time. When I confronted him, things got physical. It was ugly and I'm not proud of how it went down. But the real kicker was my parents. Instead of holding him accountable, they sided with him, and that was it for me. I cut ties with all of them, Matt, my parents, the whole toxic mess. I had to, for my own sanity. Fast forward almost 2 decades and I've built a life I'm proud of. I have a great wife, Sophie, and a peaceful, drama-free existence. We decided not to have kids, and honestly I never thought I'd have any contact with my family again. Then 2 weeks ago there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, there was this teenage girl standing there, clutching a folder. She looked so much like my brother that it threw me off. Before I could say anything, she introduced herself as Lily, my niece. I had no idea. Matt had a kid. She explained that she's Matt's daughter, and that her parents died in a car accident when she was about 7. My parents, her grandparents, raised her after that, but they both passed away last year. For the past year she's been on her own, and I'm apparently the only family she has left. I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. I asked her how she even found me, and she said she'd gone through some of my parents' old things after they died and found an address for me from nearly 20 years ago. She said she spent months piecing things together online, using social media and public records, and eventually tracked me down. Then she said something that hit me hard. I know about what happened between you and my dad. I know he hurt you. I'm not here to make excuses for him or my grandparents. I don't have anyone else. She handed me the folder she'd been holding, which had copies of her birth certificate, photos of her with my parents. It was all the proof I could have asked for, but it still felt surreal. I didn't know what to do. My instinct was to slam the door and protect the life I've built. But I didn't. I told her I needed time to process everything, and sent her away with a promise that I'd think about it. She gave me her number before she left, and said she was showing up out of the blue. When I told Sophie about it, she was just as stunned as I was. She's always been my rock, and she knows how much cutting ties with my family took out of me. Her first reaction was to worry about how this could reopen old wounds. But she also said it's my decision, and she'll support whatever I choose. The thing is, I don't know what to do. Part of me feels for this girl, she's clearly been through a lot. And it's not her fault that her dad and grandparents were awful to me. But the other part of me can't ignore the years of pain and betrayal that came from being involved with my family. I worked so hard to move on, and now it feels like I'm being dragged back into a mess I thought I'd escaped. If I let her in, am I just opening myself up to more heartache? Or am I punishing her for things that weren't her fault? I don't know. Reddit, I could really use some perspective here. Have any of you been in a similar situation? What would you do? Update. After Lily showed up at my doorstep, I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, my thoughts running in circles. 19 years. That's how long I've been free of my family's drama. And now here was this girl, my niece, bringing it all back. I couldn't shake her face from my mind. She looked so much like my brother that it made my stomach turn. But it wasn't just that. It was what she said. That she didn't have anyone else, that I was her last family. I didn't know what to believe. Was she just a kid looking for connection? Or was there something more? I've always been cautious when it comes to anything tied to my family. I had to be. The betrayal, the gaslighting, the way my parents enabled my brother's crap, they broke something in me. I worked so hard to rebuild my life, to find peace. And now, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of all that progress. Sophie found me in the kitchen at some ungodly hour, sitting in the dark with a cup of tea I hadn't touched. She sat across from me, quiet at first, waiting for me to speak. She's always known how to let me process things in my own time. Finally, I told her everything. How Lily showed up, what she said, the folder of proof she brought. I even told her how much she looked like Matt, which honestly made it harder to think clearly. Sophie listened without interrupting, then asked, "What do you think she wants from you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe she just wants family. Or maybe it's more. She's been on her own for a year, what if she needs money or a place to stay?" Sophie tilted her head, considering. "I mean, I get why you'd think that, but does she seem like the type? She's a teenager, right? Probably just scared and lonely." "Maybe," I said, though I wasn't convinced. "It's just hard to trust anything connected to my family. I'm afraid of getting pulled back into all of that." She nodded. "You have every right to feel that way. But whatever you decide, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could meet her halfway, see what she's about, then decide if you want to stay in touch." We talked for a long time, going back and forth. Sophie was careful not to push me one way or the other, but she made her stance clear. If reconnecting with Lily started to mess with my head or hurt the life we've built, she'd want me to walk away. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't ready to let Lily into my life completely, but I couldn't just ignore her either. If she wanted to talk, I'd give her that much. I texted her that afternoon. "Me, hi, it's OP. I've thought about what you said. Let's meet and talk. Coffee shop near Main Street. Tomorrow at 2. Her reply came almost immediately. "Lily. Thank you so much. I'll be there." When I told Sophie, she just gave me a small smile and said, "Let me know how it goes." The next day, I got to the coffee shop early. I found a table in the back where I could see the door. My palms were sweating and my stomach felt like it was tied in knots. I don't know why I was so nervous, she's just a kid, but I couldn't help it. When Lily walked in, I recognized her instantly. She looked a little more polished than she had at my door. But there was still a nervousness in the way she carried herself. She spotted me and hesitated for a second before coming over. We sat in awkward silence for a minute before she started talking. She told me more about her life, how my parents had raised her after the accident, how they'd never really talked about me, and how she'd only found out about the fallout between me and my family as she got older. "I don't know the full story," she said. "I just know my dad hurt you and my grandparents didn't make it better. I'm not here to defend them or anything. I've lost everyone. I thought maybe you'd want to know me." I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt for her, she's just a kid who's been through hell. But the other part of me couldn't help but feel wary. I asked what they told her about me. She replied. "They said there was a fight. That you and my dad had some kind of falling out and you cut ties after that. They didn't go into details, but I could tell it was bad. I pieced some of it together when I got older. I didn't press for more. I wasn't ready to open that door yet." She told me about her plans finishing high school, applying to college, and studying social work. She said she didn't want anything from me, just a chance to stay in touch. When we left, I told her I needed more time to think. She said she understood and gave me her number again just in case. Now I'm stuck. I want to believe her. But a part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've spent years running from my past, and now it's sitting in front of me, asking for a second chance. What would you do? Am I being too cautious or am I right to keep my guard up? Commenter 1. It's really sad that Lily's been through so much. But I'm curious about how your parents treated her. If they never talked about you, does that mean they also fed her the same toxic BS they gave you? Did they raise her in a way that would make you wary of her intentions? It might help to reflect on how they treated you compared to how they treated her. Honestly, that's been on my mind too. From what Lily told me, my parents didn't talk about me much, and when they did, it was vague or dismissive. She said they mostly framed it as a fight and me cutting them off, which I guess is technically true but leaves out a lot. As for how they treated her, it's hard to say for sure. She didn't go into much detail, but she didn't sound bitter toward them. It makes me think they were at least decent to her, or maybe she's just being polite. I don't know if they fed her the same excuses and justifications they gave me, but I'm wary that their influence might have shaped how she sees me or the situation. Commenter 2. You said Lily mentioned that your parents told her about a fight with your brother, but didn't get into the details. Did they ever try to contact you after you went in? And how do you feel about her being Matt's daughter specifically? Does her resemblance to him bring back bad memories, or is it more about the fear of old wounds reopening? OP no, my parents never reached out after I went NC. Not once. I think they were so convinced I was the unreasonable one, that they didn't feel the need to apologize or make amends. As for Lily being Matt's daughter, it's complicated. I won't lie. The resemblance threw me off. It's not her fault, obviously. But seeing her is like being smacked in the face with everything I worked to forget. I think it's less about her and more about the fear of reopening old wounds. I don't know if I can separate her from her dad yet. But I'm trying to remind myself that she's not him, and she didn't ask for any of this. Commenter 3: I think it's great that you're willing to give her a chance. But have you thought about what boundaries you might need if you do decide to let her into your life? Like, would you want to keep it limited to occasional check-ins? Or would you be open to a closer relationship? And what happens if she does need financial or emotional support? Are you prepared for that? I've been thinking a lot about boundaries, and honestly I'm not sure yet. Right now I'm leaning toward keeping it limited, like occasional check-ins or meeting for coffee every now and then. I don't think I'm ready for anything deeper, and I definitely need time to figure out if I can trust her and what kind of relationship, if any, I'm comfortable with. If she needs financial support, that's a whole other conversation. I'm not in a position to be guardian or anything like that. But if she needed a little help, I might consider it depending on the situation. Emotional support, though. That's harder. I don't know if I can be that person for her. Not yet. Update. It's been 2 months since Lily showed up at my doorstep, and I can honestly say my life looks completely different now. I won't pretend the process was easy or that everything magically worked itself out. But for the first time in nearly 2 decades, I feel like I'm finally making peace with my past. After our second meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I kept replaying her words in my mind, especially how she said I just wanted to know if I had someone. She wasn't asking for money, a place to live, or anything like that, just a connection. But after everything I've been through with my family, I couldn't help but feel wary. To ease my mind, I decided to verify Lily's story. Not because I thought she was lying, but because I needed to feel sure before letting her into my life. I started with what she'd told me about her parents. She mentioned the accident happened when she was 7. So I searched local news archives online, using the approximate date and location she'd shared. Sure enough, I found an article about a fatal crash involving a couple with her parents' names. It didn't provide much detail beyond confirming that they left behind a young daughter. Next, I turned to public records for my parents' deaths. Their names were listed in a database of property transfers, showing that their home had been sold shortly after their passing. I even found a few mentions of them in community newsletters Lily had described, which reassured me that she'd been truthful about her life with them. Finally, I took another look at the folder Lily had brought to our first meeting. It included copies of letters from my parents, family photos with Lily, and even her birth certificate with Matt's name listed as her father. Seeing it all again made me realize just how much effort she'd put into proving herself to me. By the end of my digging, I knew one thing. Lily wasn't trying to manipulate me. She was exactly who she said. She was a young woman who'd lost everything and was searching for some kind of connection. After a lot of thought, I reached out to her again. Hey Lily. I've been thinking a lot about our talks. Would you like to meet again? Same coffee shop. This time next week? Her response came almost immediately. Lily. Thank you so much. I'll be there. Sophie was supportive, but also reminded me to take things one step at a time. When we met for the 3rd time, it was a different kind of conversation. I started by being upfront about where I stood. I want to be part of your life, I told her, but I need to take things slow. My relationship with your dad and your grandparents left me with a lot of scars, and I'm still working through them. I don't want to project any of that onto you. Lily nodded and said, she understands and is just grateful I'm willing to try. She opened up even more during that meeting, telling me about her struggles over the past year. She admitted how lonely and overwhelming it's been, living alone and juggling work and school. She insisted she wasn't asking for financial help, but I could tell she felt lost. Hearing her talk about her struggles shifted something in me. For years, I've avoided anything to do with my family, because I was afraid of being hurt again. But Lily wasn't asking for anything except connection. She didn't want to drag me back into the past, she wanted to be part of my present. Over the next few weeks, we started to build a relationship. I kept checking in with her, offering advice where I could and learning more about her. Eventually, Sophie and I invited her over for dinner. It was awkward at first, but Sophie, being her wonderful self, broke the tension. By the end of the night, Lily was laughing and sharing stories about her childhood with my parents. One night after dinner, Lily asked me a question I wasn't expecting. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? My dad, my grandparents. It stopped me in my tracks. Forgiveness isn't something I've thought about much. For so long, I told myself I'd never forgive them for what they did to me. But now, with Lily in my life, I'm starting to realize forgiveness doesn't have to be about excusing their actions. It's about freeing myself from the anger I've carried for so long. I don't know, I told her honestly. But maybe this is a step in that direction. Now, 2 months after that first knock at my door, things are finally starting to feel normal. Lily is a regular part of my life now. We're not super close yet, but we're getting there. She's finishing high school and planning to study social work, and I've been helping her navigate the college application process. Sophie has been amazing through all of this. She's embraced Lily with open arms, but also made sure I'm protecting my boundaries. It's because of her support that I've been able to take this step without losing myself in the process. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't slam the door in Lily's face. Reconnecting with her hasn't erased the pain of the past, but it's helped me find a sense of closure I didn't think was possible. Lily isn't her dad or my parents. She's her own person and she's worth giving a chance. Second story. My dad overheard their golden child daughter bragging about cheating with my husband to my mom. Now, regretting how they treated me, he told me everything and apologized. I lost it. For a way, because my family knows my main. I 34F have been married to Tom 36M for 10 years. We don't have kids. We always said we wanted to focus on building a life together first. Looking back, I don't know if that was mutual or if it was just another way I convinced myself we were happy. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is? But I genuinely believed we were solid. I thought we had each other's backs. Turns out I was delusional. For some background, my sister Megan 30F has always been the golden child. She's gorgeous, outgoing and charismatic, while I've always been more low-key. Megan was my mom's clear favorite growing up. She got away with everything, from skipping school to wrecking her car. Mom would shrug it off, saying, "That's just Megan." Meanwhile, I was the one expected to set a good example, help around the house and be the responsible one. My dad 62M tried to even things out, but he's not confrontational, and he often let Mom and Megan run the show. I've learned to manage my resentment over the years, but it's always been there, simmering. Last week my dad called me out of the blue. He sounded off like he was nervous or upset. At first I thought something had happened to him or Mom. But then he asked if we could meet up to talk about something important. When we met up, he looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He told me that a few nights earlier, he overheard a conversation between Megan and my mom. Apparently, Megan was bragging about how she'd been sleeping with Tom. She said it started months ago and acted like it was some kind of game she was winning. She even said something about how Tom should have been with her all along, and how I wasn't exciting enough for him. And my mom actually defended Megan, telling her to stay quiet and let things blow over. At that point I was in shock. My dad kept apologizing for not telling me sooner, but he said he needed time to process what he'd heard. He knew telling me would cause a huge blow-up in the family, but he couldn't stand by and let me live in the dark. I'll be honest, I didn't cry right then. I didn't scream or yell. I just sat there completely numb as my dad kept apologizing. The betrayal didn't fully hit me until later, when I was alone. When I got home, I confronted Tom. I didn't even bother to ease into it, I just told him what I knew and asked if it was true. At first he tried to deny it. He said my dad must have misunderstood, or was trying to stir up drama. But when I kept pushing, he finally admitted it. He said it wasn't serious and that it just happened. According to him, it started after a family dinner about 6 months ago, when he and Megan were talking after everyone else went to bed. He swore it wasn't planned and that he regretted it. I didn't cry in front of him. I just told him to pack a bag and leave. He kept begging me to talk it out and go to therapy, but I couldn't even look at him. He tried to hug me and I physically recoiled. That was the moment he realized I was done. The next person I called was Megan. I didn't even give her a chance to pretend. She didn't know what was going on. I just asked her why. Her response: "You're overreacting." She didn't apologize. She didn't try to explain. She just brushed it off like it was no big deal. She actually had the audacity to say that I wasn't meeting Tom's needs, and that I should have seen this coming. I don't even remember what I said after that, was shaking with rage. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. I thought that was the end of it. But of course my mom had to get involved. The next day she called me and told me I needed to be the bigger person. She said that what happened was a mistake and that I shouldn't throw away my marriage over something so small. She kept bringing up how family is forever, and how cutting off Megan would create a permanent rift. I told her the only people creating a rift were her and Megan. She doubled down, saying Megan was going through a tough time and that I should forgive her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At one point she actually said, "You're not perfect either. Maybe if you'd focused more on your marriage, this wouldn't have happened." That was it for me. I told her she was just as bad as Megan for enabling her behavior, and I didn't want anything to do with either of them. My dad, to his credit, told me he understood my decision. He said he didn't agree with my mom, and would support me no matter what. But the rest of the family? That's another story. Now the fallout is in full swing. Tom has been blowing up my phone, begging me to fix things. He keeps saying he made a mistake and doesn't want to lose me. But how can I ever trust him again? Megan, meanwhile, is playing the victim. She's telling everyone that I'm overreacting and being cruel for cutting her off. She's even convinced some of our extended family that I'm the one breaking up the family, not her. And my mom? She won't stop calling and texting, trying to guilt-trip me into forgiving Megan and Tom. She keeps saying, "I will regret this when I'm older." The only person who has my back is my dad. He's been trying to keep the peace between me and Mom, but even he's struggling to deal with her favoritism toward Megan. As for me, I feel like I'm drowning. I've started the process of filing for divorce, but every time I think about it, I feel this overwhelming mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I can't believe the two people I trusted most could do this to me. So, Reddit, am I the arsehole for divorcing my husband, cutting off my sister, and going no contact with my mom? Some of my family think I'm being too harsh. But I can't keep sacrificing my own well-being for the sake of keeping the family together. Update. After I kicked Tom out, everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. Divorce is messy, even when the split is mutual. But this felt like an all-out war. Tom kept calling and texting, alternating between begging for forgiveness and berating me for not giving him a chance to fix things. I blocked his number after 2 days. I couldn't handle the emotional whiplash. Megan was no better. I had her blocked. But that didn't stop her from sending messages through our mutual family members. Apparently she thought I was being petty for not hearing her out. One cousin told me Megan said I was ruining the family over a stupid mistake. A mistake? She slept with my husband for half a year and had the audacity to brag about it. The real kicker, though, was my mom. She called me non-stop for days after I told her I was cutting her off. At first it was all guilt trips. How can you just walk away from your family like this? You're throwing everything away. When that didn't work, she switched to blaming me. If you hadn't neglected your marriage, this wouldn't have happened. That line gutted me. I told her that defending Megan's behavior was the last straw. Until she could take accountability for enabling Megan, I wanted nothing to do with her. She didn't take it well. Word spread quickly through the family, and the reactions were a mixed bag. My dad fully supported me. He even apologized for not confronting Mom about her favoritism sooner. He said he felt ashamed for standing by while Megan walked all over me for years. But he was done being silent. Extended family, however, was another story. Some relatives had my back. My Aunt Mom's sister called to say she was disgusted with both Megan and Tom. She offered me a place to stay if I ever needed it, and even told me about other times Megan had caused drama that my mom had swept under the rug. But then there were the neutral ones, the peacemakers. They kept telling me I should forgive Megan for my own sake, or at least talk to her so I could get closure. I told them closure wasn't something Megan could give me, it was something I had to find for myself, far away from her. And then there were the ones who sided with Megan. A few cousins and even a family friend tried to tell me that Megan was struggling, and that this was all a cry for help. One cousin even had the nerve to say, "She's your sister. You'll forgive her eventually. You have to." No, I don't. The divorce process was brutal. Tom refused to make things easy. We didn't have kids, but we did have shared finances and a house. He dragged his feet on every decision. From who would keep what to how we'd split the equity in the home. At one point he actually suggested that we stay separated instead of divorcing. Just in case we could work things out later. I laughed in his face. The worst part was realizing how many of our mutual friends didn't know how to pick a side or didn't want to. Some of them told me they didn't want to get involved, while others tried to play devil's advocate. One even said, "Well, Megan's your sister. It's not like Tom cheated with a random stranger." As if that somehow made it better. Lee, my best friend since college, was the only one who truly had my back. She let me crash at her place during the initial fallout, and even came with me to meet with my lawyer. She reminded me that I deserved better, that I shouldn't feel ashamed for walking away from people who treated me like garbage. Amid all the chaos, I started therapy. My therapist helped me unpack years of resentment I'd buried, not just toward Megan, but also toward my mom. I realized how much their dynamic had shaped my life. My whole childhood, I'd been taught to put Megan's needs above my own. It wasn't just favoritism, it was enabling. Megan never had to face consequences for her actions because Mom was always there to clean up the mess or shift the blame. And now, as an adult, Megan had taken that entitlement to a whole new level. For the first time, I started to see how much I'd sacrificed to keep the peace in my family. I'd let Megan's behavior slide for years because I didn't want her to rock the boat. But this was the final straw. The one bright spot in all of this was my dad. We hadn't always been close. But the way he stepped up during this nightmare made me realize how much he cared. After I cut off my mom, my dad started spending more time with me. He'd drop by with groceries or just call to check in and see how I was doing. One night, he opened up about how much he regretted letting my mom's favoritism go unchecked. He admitted he'd always known Megan was trouble. But he thought it was easier to keep the peace than to call her out. It was the first time I'd ever seen him really take a stand. And it meant more to me than I can say. I've filed for divorce, gone no contact with Megan and my mom, and moved into a small apartment closer to Lee. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and for the first time in years I feel like I can breathe. I don't know if I will update anymore, unless a major thing happens with my sister and mom, like what happened that day. That day is not far. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share it with your friends.